Hello, post-production Aramis here. Thank y'all so much for the long wait for this episode. I've been busy with gigs and contracts over the past few weeks, so I appreciate the patience. Secondly, this episode now dated to release on the anniversary of Kevin Seymour's passing, so I do want to say rest in peace, Kevin. You are missed by many, and your legend lives on through your work and the people that you impacted. Now, enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Animazing, the stories of Kevin Seymour. I am your host, Aramis, and this is episode 9 of the show. And I have a very special interview for y'all today. The wonderful and amazing Jamieson Price, who, for the sake of all things anime, you've heard from the Hidden Leaf Village all the way to Demacia, to your narration of some books, all the way to all sorts of things. Man with the golden throat. For the sake of this podcast, for Animaze, he was in the Animaze dub for Cagliostro. He was in Akira as Colonel Shikishima. I did not want to butcher that. And then Code Geass, Diethard, and many, many others. Now, please take it away, Jamieson. Give us a little introduction about yourself, because you know yourself better than me.
Well, hello everyone. I've been doing this a little while. Started back in the mid '90s, so 30 years. My goodness, time has flown by. I've done everything from Digimon and little Pokemon and Naruto and Bleach and World of Warcraft. I mean, that's not anime, but lots of video game work. And then I've also branched out into film narrations, live narration, and even announcing people's names at graduation ceremonies. So a lot of voice work.
Okay.
And some on-camera stuff too, by the way. But
Ooh. That is rare for a lot of voiceovers, so I'll have to see if I could track you down somewhere. Ooh. Hey, IMDb is both a friend, and it shows it knows all, sees all.
it knows most. It doesn't see all.
It doesn't see
And
it.
it's getting better, but there's lots of misinformation out there, which is kind of tough. But
That's what this project has been trying to fix.
Good.
There's, I just to get it, little tangent of that. There's been so many either miscredits or lack of credit. Part of that is y'all's fault. The amount of pseudonyms
True.
y'all used back in the day.
Well, there was only a handful of us, and so they didn't want it to look like 10 people were doing all these things. So everybody had multiple names. It was kind of funny, and people were coming up with very creative ones.
I've been finding out. I think for Akira, and I wrote it down here. Is it James Lyon or it's
Lion. Yes.
Lion with a
Lion
Y.
is actually, it's I'm not that creative, so I used different family names.
Okay.
And that was a family name on my mother's side that I thought was cool.
Okay.
So.
Okay, but no one was as guilty as that as Kevin Seymour.
Oh yes, well, because he directed a bunch of these things, and so he didn't want to make all directed by Kevin. So
He never used his real name. He rarely used.
he never?
He never really used. Like there was the occasion, but I'll give you my favorite example so far: Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Ghost in the Shell,
Right.
directed by Quint Lancaster.
Yes, that was the name I remember. I thought it was Quentin, but Quint Lancaster.
Was it it was Quint, and then he would use like Duggery Grant as his voiceover credit,
Okay, yeah.
and then for that one in particular, there was one other pseudonym that was also his that he used for minor voices in the film, like for a ferryman that got. It was just him screaming, but he used a different pseudonym just to fill out the roster. I think.
Well, yeah, because then it looks like there's all these different people working on it, and it seems more legitimate, I guess. Back in the day, dubbing anime was not mainstream or a high value target. People were kind of embarrassed to say they did it. I mean, I thought it was kind of fun, but there were a lot of actors that didn't want to be associated with it, so they would use different names.
Yeah. I think there was a few actors that I would see that would use their real names more often than not, but more often than not, it was either that or I think a lot of them were non-union, so they had to use pseudonyms.
Right. Yep.
I think there was an entire I could go down this rabbit hole, and if you want to hear all this stuff in different episodes, I will be covering every Animaze property that exists. So that is the goal, but there were some, just one off the top of my head, Rumble Rose. It was a fighting game. The entire voice cast was not credited. Like, it just says the Rumble Rose's English team or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was all the female cast members that they used all had unique enough voices that it was pretty easy. Like somebody like Carrie Savage is a very unique tone, or like Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, Jessica Strauss.
Yeah.
It was easy enough to discern each of them, but we could go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Crediting, I mean, it's kind of at the producer's discretion.
Yeah.
And so I think early in it, they wanted the Japanese cast names in there.
Yeah.
But then the English dub was not considered at the same level. And so it was, the English team. That you didn't get individual credits. That was something that people had to kind of ask for and finally got.
Yeah. But I would say, so you say you've been doing this since the early to mid 90s.
Yep.
Around. So let's go with, first things first, this is the stories of Kevin Seymour. So if you recall, what was the first piece that you remember, going to Mag 8 and working with him?
Ooh, I do not remember the first one, because I started off doing very small, Man D, Guard C, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had, just after I got my MFA, graduated with my MFA from Cal State Long Beach, I was doing a show in Long Beach at the Long Beach Playhouse. And my leading lady happened to be Dorothy Fawn. And Dorothy and her husband Tom were doing a lot of work at Animaze. And she kind of went, "You got a cool voice. I think you'd be good at this." And she got me a foot in the door at Animaze and introduced me to Kevin. And so I owe Dorothy everything. But so I met Kevin, and he kind of went, "All right, let me see." But he was very, not tentative, not wary, but I guess suspicious a little bit. He wanted to see what I could do and what kind of person I was. I had just gotten my MFA. I can teach college, but I don't have a huge ego. And so he was having me do little things and just to kind of ease me into it and teach me the ropes of anime. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever you want, and did stuff. So I proved myself to be easy to work with and directable. And, all right, I'll be whatever guard or, anonymous man. So I don't remember the kind of the first ones.
Yeah.
I do remember Big O was kind of one of the first bigger roles that I did, I think. Big Ear. I did Big Ear and Big O.
That would have been, it says, I think, 99 for that one.
Okay.
So that would have been around the same time as Bebop.
Yeah, Bebop. Well, I started off with Kevin, and so doing all these little things. And then there were other directors like Mary Elizabeth McGlynn who came in and were directing things and went, "Hey, can I use you on this other project like Cowboy Bebop?" So I was in an episode of Cowboy Bebop, which was really cool. And this is before I knew what, Akira or, I mean, they've become more iconic, I suppose, as the years have gone by.
Oh, yeah.
But when I was doing it was like just another gig.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But so that was how I met Kevin, and he was an interesting fellow, kind of quiet, not a big ego person himself, and found out much later after he had passed all of his accomplishments and was kind of blown away by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was kind of unassuming. He knew what he wanted, and if he got it from you, then you worked, and they worked out well.
Yeah. I think the perfect synopsis was he was a man of mystery.
Yes, he held his cards close to his vest, as the saying goes.
Yeah. But the stories I've heard so far match up with yours being very, let's see what you can do. But,
yes. No, he would challenge you, in a good way.
Yeah.
But give you, okay, you did that, great. Let's see what you can do with this. And so I worked my way up over the course of a year or so to doing bigger roles, and then started getting bigger roles
outside of animes and all that.
And then really my career kind of took off.
Yeah, no, that I definitely saw that because I did a quick, look through, kind of, a lot of the early stuff. Small animes roles here and there. Of course, you have to scour dozens of websites and credits just to kind of piece all that together. That's been the challenge. But, and then, as I said, just some of them you literally have to go into the old VHSs or the old DVDs and dig them out. Or you got to do them by ear and be like, is this them?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the, all the big stuff you mentioned, Akira, which everyone knows Akira.
Yeah.
It's one of the and just to mention this right now because it's as good as time as any. There were at least 4 or 5 dubs that Kevin did that either had been done before and he had redone them. Yes. Or his dub was redone later. So I think examples of the first one of the former were Lupin, the third, Castle of Cagliostro, which fits both categories now, and I'll get to that in a second. Akira, of course. You have I'll just clump them together. You had Appleseed. You had, I think, Giant Robo had an NYAV dub afterwards.
I don't think I was in Giant Robo, but I can't remember. I think Giant Robo was before I got involved.
Yeah, you were Appleseed. I know you were in that one.
Right, Appleseed, and then it got because that was first done under, was it Bondi?
I thought y'all were the first ones to do it, and then
well, we were whatever the first one. Yeah, so we did a dub, and then it got sold to
it was Genion,
Texas. It was Genion.
It was Genion. It was Genion, and then Texas.
So Genion started it, and then it got sold.
Yeah.
To. Was it then? It was sold to somebody else.
It was Funimation, I want to say, because it has,
So, of course, then they did their own version.
Yeah.
So then they did, like, the second movie, Appleseed 2.
And then they went and did Appleseed 1.
And they went back and did Appleseed 1, so they had the consistent cast.
And then,
darn them. Because that was a fun movie. I liked that one a lot.
Some of these dubs, it's fascinating, because Kevin would do them. And then he'd maybe do the next one, and then they'd either get bought out or other things in the background that it just happened. But, just to name 2 more that were interesting, and another big one's Yu Yu Hakusho, the movie.
Okay.
It was The Golden Seal. It was David Hayter. It had a bunch of the staples, and then that got bought up by Funimation. But and then I think the last one would be like Ghost in the Shell 2.
Okay.
Which had a dub done by Richard Epcar for Europe.
Okay.
And then the Animaze dub. And then circling back, I mentioned at the very beginning, Lupin the Third just had a new dub come out, which you were the Count of Cagliostro.
Yes. I got to be the Count in that one, yeah. And I'd done some other Lupin stuff for Richard.
Yeah.
I believe.
But no, I still got to listen to that one because I've listened to the first 2, and it's one of the rare cases where there are 3 dubs for the same movie, and the last 2 have some overlap because a lot of that talent who works with Richard worked with Kevin. So but okay,
it is interesting how things get dubbed and redubbed, whether it's I don't know what the market pressure is on it, whether it's the producers
Yeah.
wanting something more updated or something. But yeah, that does happen,
It
and a
does.
fair amount, which is kind of interesting.
It is.
But we see that in Hollywood. We see movies recycled. It's like, this sold well. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Let's do it for this market or that market. Let's do it for the Asian market. Let's do it for the
Yeah.
European market, and we'll just we'll duct tape it something else new on it or something like that. So,
Yeah.
But so yeah, so started out with small bit roles and then
Right.
worked your way up, and you kept going back in. You got really big, but you would still keep coming back. You know, the last one I want to say the last one that you did for at least for Animaze for Kevin, I want to say it was called Geass from just my research.
I don't think that was the last one.
It would have been
But, yeah.
08.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, Code Geass lasted over several seasons.
yeah, it was.
Um,
Yeah, because
yeah.
the Japanese went from 06 to 08, but y'all like recorded all of them back to back in 08.
Yeah. Okay.
But so you met them through Dorothy, which I'm
Yes.
looking forward to speaking with them at some point. Dorothy and Tom.
Yeah.
So
They are so fun. They
That's-
are good peoples.
that's what I've heard. I've reached out to them already, so I'm waiting for
Oh, good.
I'm waiting for an email back or a phone
Okay.
call. But you taught me patience. Patience is a virtue in this industry.
It is, and we're all really busy doing, hustling and trying to get work and working.
Yeah.
One hopes. So yeah, pester us. I mean, don't pester us, but keep at it and be patient.
Be persistent, not obnoxious.
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
So okay. Well, moving on, because stories are stories. What other stories do you want to be heard from experiences where you've worked with Kevin?
Oh, other stories. I'm trying to remember a story because it was so long ago. I mean, for me, the personal stuff was kind of fun, but it wasn't, revelatory. Revelatory, whatever that word is. But when he passed and we all kind of gathered to honor him, and stories were told then, and I learned how instrumental he was in bringing anime to the West. I was kind of blown away. He, from subtitling to actual dubbing, and the care that he took in making sure that the dubbing was well done, and that we matched the mouth movements, because that was in previous years and incarnations, people didn't pay a lot of attention to that. I remember when I was a kid watching monster movies, Japanese monster movies, because I loved those, the Godzilla stuff, and all the different monsters. But the sync wasn't there, and so it was kind of funny instead of more dramatic. I suppose it would have been had the sync been on. So he really cared about that, and we worked very hard to match that, which at that time we didn't have the kind of wonderful computer softwares that we do now, and we can really match things up.
Oh yeah.
But he cared so much. He kept it all inside. It was interesting, but finding out later how significant he was to the industry was revelatory. Revelatory. I think it's with a V first.
Is it,
I speak for a living. What? This is crazy. Revelatory. It was a revelation. So revelatory. Yes.
I did tech for a living, and we saw how long that took.
Yes.
So,
But some of the fun things I remember, the pickle jar, because we would do space helmets and things like that, or helmets in space. You're an astronaut, so you're in a little bubble. And in the booth, there were various sizes of jars, plastic jars, and that was your pickle. And so, okay, get the big pickle. I'm like, do what? Oh, and then he had to explain. I'm like, okay. So then you would get, I don't have one over here, because we don't use this anymore. We have software that we could play with.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was like a big cup or something, and then you'd put it here, and you could do more pickle or less pickle. And he would go, you would experiment, and you go, that's it, right there. And then you couldn't move. So you had to make sure that if you were moving around and doing anything, this relationship kept the same to get the same level of pickle. And it sounded very much like you were in, a little helmet. That was really kind of fun. The other thing I really remember is it was Thanksgiving. We were visiting, my wife and my children and I were visiting relatives up in the Bay Area, and on Thanksgiving, Kevin calls to book a job, and my wife's like, "Doesn't he have something?" But no, he was so. I mean, that was his life, and it was, he didn't care if it was Thanksgiving night. He's going to call you and okay, I need you to come in next week. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was very dedicated.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Anything he put his attention to, I think some of the stuff I've heard and I've even seen with his work is his attention to detail on the characters of any given story. Anything from big serialized shows, with like Fist of the North Star or Code Geass, to the small like OVA films like Catnapped, which is growing to be one of my favorites that he worked on.
Oh.
He knew his characters, so whenever he'd write up these scripts and descriptions for the actors, like this is your basically what's my character's motivation. Kevin would have essentially a paragraph of what this character, what their background was, what their inspiration, motivation.
That is so much fun because then you can really use your imagination and build on that. Yeah. And it gives you a sense of person to play. And I think that may be also why he liked my work, is that I could and would commit to whatever character it was 110%. So even if it was man D, guard C, whoever, I wasn't going to half-ass it. I was going to go for that, and I was going to commit to it. And, whether it was a single line of backstory or a paragraph that he would have to give you an idea of what it was, I would go with it and honor that and work for it. And I think that synced up with his attention to detail like that.
And I've fortunately, now like this is a bit sad, but whenever he passed away, his house was essentially a museum. He had all sorts of things, but the thing that really stuck out is he kept pretty much every single script he ever worked on.
Wow.
And he didn't have the best way to put it, him and his family were not close. And when his estate went up, a bunch of the stuff got sold or thrown out.
Oh.
Yeah. And of course, nowadays, as you mentioned back then, people were embarrassed. They didn't understand the importance. So I've been trying to track down old scripts with notes.
Ooh.
As I said, this is part of it's in archive. So a lot of this stuff is going to be lost to time. But a community member reached out to me and was like, hey, check out this website. They have sample shots from whenever they auctioned all this stuff out. And they were Kevin's scripts from his estate. And there'd be notes on them.
Oh.
Yeah, and at some point, I'd love to track a few of those down. But some of them, I genuinely, I think I'll use Catnapped as an example, where I think it was for Bob Pappenbrook, Bryce Pappenbrook's father.
Happy. Yes.
I'd love to get Bryce on the show at one point to talk about both his and his dad, because everyone who's passed away also needs to be honored in some way. So Tom, Bob, all of them. But there was a note on the script for the character that he played where it said Bob Pappenbrook. That's the only credit that can be seen. Like, it's Bob because you can hear it's Bob. But there's no credit in the actual credits of the VHS or the DVD. So that little snippet was like, in Kevin's handwriting. It says Pop,
Yeah.
or it will say like who he considered for some of these roles. And of course,
Yeah.
he used the same people all over, but if he didn't use them for a lead, he'd fit them in somewhere else, which I
Well,
thought
yeah,
was
'cause
really cool.
didn't pay very well. Still doesn't pay that well.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to work a lot of jobs, and
Yeah.
so yeah. So it's like lead, great. Supporting role, fine. Incidentals, okay. Walla groups, sure.
Oh, the stories I've heard about Wallas are, crack door for air, CDFA, being stuck in a room. I think from Michael Sorich, he was stuck in a one of the small telephone sized booths with two of the fawns doing Wallas.
Oh no.
Or just like stories like that where they're just stuck in these small booths. Now you got the much bigger stuff to fit more people, but before it was only
Yeah.
meant to fit one person. And then on top of that, I'm wondering if they had to do that on top of the pickle jars, because if you're a walla in like a group of engineers, are you mixing
Yeah.
those later? Are you wallaing them? Like,
Then everybody would have a pickle. If
What-
in that kind of thing. Nowadays, yeah, it's all done with software, and there aren't as many Walla groups like getting together in the booth and doing that.
because everyone's
we will
everywhere.
Well, no, we'll just record Walla individually. So you're in doing a character, then you'll do some incidentals, and you do a little Walla, and then you put that all together.
Which is, this is just my personal preference, and honestly, I think the ingenuity speaks volumes back in the 90s how it sounds, but I'm still a fan of some of the analog techniques,
Yeah.
because there's just a sense of like, yeah, software, you can do things with software. Like I could be mixing with software. Like I'm using a digital, but it's still a physical piece of hardware that I can touch,
Right.
mess with. I have an old school, receiver that's like 25 years old, like 20 years old, hooked up to my audio system. There's something about older stuff that just feels nicer. It feels a
Yeah.
lot more genuine. Instead of just clicking a button, you actually have to put in the effort. Like, there's effort to software, don't get me wrong, but this
Sometimes there's a lot of effort to software.
Oh, very much so. Like I've been doing all this audio
Oh.
mixing myself, and it's hard. It is difficult, but with persistence and just continuously improving yourself. But
Yeah.
honestly, before we move on to like maybe some other non-Kevin but still Animaze adjacent, because there are stories there for sure, I wanted to mention a few niche. See if I can catch you on something that you may not. So I'm gonna turn over
Okay.
here. So one of the ones that I found, I'll start with the funniest one first, or one of the more interesting ones is, it was a video game
Okay.
called Phase Paradox.
Wow. Don't remember that one.
So with
Phase Paradox.
see if I can.
Is there a character?
Let's see here. Massimo Emerson.
Doesn't ring a bell, but it doesn't mean I didn't do it.
So
Because, we did a lot. So, wow, that's niche.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that one, there's a few where I don't know, because Kevin did a lot bringing stuff over to the West, but when they needed English dialogue, it seems, for video games that were either exclusive in Japan or it was primarily being recorded in English, which was a newer concept. It's more mainstream nowadays, but
Yeah.
back then, if it was made in Japan, it was recorded in Japanese first and then dubbed later.
Yes.
But this one, it was recorded in English with Japanese subtitles.
Interesting.
And it's a
Wow.
sequel to a game that actually got released here in the States. So I'm still trying to track down a copy. It isn't too difficult, but for me, I collect games. It's my hobby.
Yeah.
But that one was interesting. What about this one? Gundam Side Story 0079.
Ooh, 0079.
It was a...
Oh, no, I'm thinking of Cyborg 0009.
Yeah.
That was another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did a bunch of different Gundams
Yeah.
over the years. because there's so many iterations of Gundam.
Yeah, that was Rise from the Ashes. That was a
Hmm.
Dreamcast game. A lot of these are video games, surprisingly, because
Oh, okay.
a lot of the games, from what I can tell, and this is just purely from research,
Yeah.
is Kevin would do some big titles, Brave Fencer Musashi, the Drakengard games, and then
Hmm.
I think it was like Cup of Tea or other studios would pick up the sequels later. Yeah,
Yes.
stuff like that. And I'll leave it at that. But you'd have, the Suikoden games. The industry was starting to pop off and actually grow. So a lot more studios
Yeah.
popped up,
Hmm.
and so there was, less work to go around to each studio.
And more competition,
Exactly. Last one off
which
the. Oh,
sometimes drives prices down,
yeah,
which kind of sucks.
that's what my research has gotten to, and I've seen and I've
Yeah.
heard. So, when I first cracked into this project, I noticed stuff like that, and I've gotten verbal confirmation later that that was the case. I wasn't just going crazy, and
Yep.
it sucks. But the last one I'll throw at you
Okay.
is, and this is probably the most, like, I cannot find anything on this, but it
Wow.
was an Animaze project for a
Okay.
big MMO,
Hmm.
Final Fantasy 11.
11.
Yeah.
I remember 7 a little bit,
Yeah, there was 7.
but not 11.
Yeah, so
Huh.
so that one, and this is my working theory with that one, because it leads into the current MMO.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't full voice acting in it, but there was FMV cutscenes at the beginning, and I think
Yeah.
a bunch of y'all were brought in to record for that.
Oh, okay.
Fast forward, and this is where I think it connects and why I think it's true.
Yeah.
Most of the actors who worked on that ended up working on the first voice acted MMO, which was 14. You had Dorothy, you had Richard Epcar, you had
Okay.
all these people that, if you look at them, they're all Animaze vets.
Ah. Okay.
That's my working theory of
Hmm.
why, why I think 11, why 14 has such a similar cast to 11, is those are kind of the people who had worked last of them, because 12 and
Yeah.
13 were European, or they used to, they used different, and
Okay.
they used different people. And
Yeah.
then, as we mentioned earlier, 14, they recast everyone with a British studio.
Ugh.
So, and which they still use today. They're not bad, but there were some performances that I did prefer with the LA based dub. But
Hmm.
but yeah, no, that one is going to be the hardest to research, because there's really nothing out there. It for me to really,
Wow.
like, look at, but that's a problem for another day for me. But yeah, you were in, according to my research, at least a third to a quarter. I'd say about a quarter of what Kevin worked on over the years. Probably around
Oh,
between,
wow.
I want to say, like, the first one was probably Fist of the North Star, and I'd probably say one of the last
Okay.
ones was
Yeah.
probably Code Geass. So a good, like, 10
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
There might have been something else with, like, ZRO, because ZRO, and Animaze were,
Yep.
they were
Yeah.
just, which I'm looking forward to talking with you, Taka, at some point. So
Yeah.
moving on.
Okay.
So Animaze is not just defined by Kevin Seymour. Kevin is who started it, but it was him giving others the opportunity not just to act, but to direct. I mentioned Mary earlier. I mentioned Leah,
Yes.
Bridget
Yeah.
Hoffman,
Yep.
Joe Ramersa, who was his audio engineer for a lot of the
Yeah.
big ones like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, which in turn would bring on new audio engineers like Phil Brewster, Michael McCarty.
Right. Yep.
What is some stories of working with those directors, if you have any?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember. Let me see. Well, Mary was just so much fun to work with, and was one of the first directors who really, I mean, she challenged me in different ways. She brought characters out of me that I didn't know I had in me. And that's the kind of wonderful thing when we're doing voice work. On camera work tends to be more typecast.
Yeah.
And not as crazy. I mean, I'm sure there's some crazy video out there, but voice work, there's a much more dynamic range to play with. Because you're playing gods and monsters and whatever. And I think it was Skull Satamon. It was this kind of skeleton character, and Mary got me some crazy voice with it, which I then kind of like, oh, okay, and I can do that, and then I've used it in some other things since then. Working with Leah was wonderful. It's not really an anime thing, but because her father, Joe Sargent, was a director, and he was doing, what was it? Mos Def was doing with Alan Rickman. It was a movie about a heart surgeon, and Alan Rickman was playing Georgian, like from Georgia, not Russian Georgia. So a southern accented surgeon, and Mos Def was his assistant, but who actually came up with the artificial heart or something, and it was amazing. But they were going to present the film or show it to the Disney execs. I think it was Disney, but they had to ADR some work in there for Alan, and Leah brought in 4 of us. She's like, okay, my dad needs this. So she brought 4 of us in. We all auditioned, and I got it. And they're like, okay, go in there. And it was just like, it was audition and go. So I went in, and then I dubbed a couple of things over Alan, trying to do a British guy doing a Southern Georgia accent, which was insane. And then they, showed it to the execs, and everything was fine. And the movie got, released. But that was a crazy thing that was kind of voice anime adjacent, because I knew Leah from working with her through multiple titles. That was a lot of fun. Is there anything else with? Yeah, Joe and Phil, great engineers, and a lot of very helpful in developing what, because I care, and because I also edit my own auditions, but I have worked very hard over the years, and I try to teach it to my students, the ability to reduce mouth pops and mouth noises, because if you have and all that stuff going on, the engineer has to go in there and edit all that stuff out. Nowadays, there is software that can go and make a pass and pull out mouth clicks or pops and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you as an actor are able to have good technique and a clean sound, it's just nicer for everybody. And they kind of helped me hone and figure out, okay, if you do this, then you can avoid that. And that was kind of cool. Learning, from engineers and being sensitive to their needs.
Yeah.
As a performer, you want, I think as a person, you want to make life better for everybody. So I'm trying to provide the character and commit to the character, give the director what they need, but I also want to give the engineer what they need so that their job is made easier. When we go in to see a casting director, audition for things, oftentimes our point of view is that we are, as actors, we're the solution. You have a problem, you've got to get this character to say this, here's my solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my attitude going into it there. And I picked up a lot of that from my early days in anime.
Yeah, absolutely. The engineers, I'd say that the lifeblood of the early anime was the engineers and then the script writers. Yeah.
Yes, because you got to get good words.
Oh, yeah.
And that's very important to making sure that you can match those mouth movements. And if you have someone who's writing words that don't really match, then all of a sudden you're rewriting, the director's rewriting, and hopefully you can help, but the director's having to rewrite in the booth. And that just slows everything down, and time is money. So
yeah.
Good script adapters, very important.
I had mentioned this in my last episode, but I'll mention it here. I had heard a really fun story from Mary Claypool, who wrote a lot of the scripts across
Yes.
the board.
Yes.
Her and of course Les and Mag 8. That was a staple of Animaze. Animaze was housed at
Yeah.
Mag 8. Not mentioning them would be, you know,
Oh
criminal.
yes.
But just two things there. One, there was you'd mentioned now we have all this clean footage. We have all these digital stuff. For Ghost in the Shell, and I'll make it brief because I mentioned it in my other episode. For Ghost in the Shell, she wrote the entire script for that in 2 weeks.
Oh.
And one of the scenes, she was 1 week in Japan, 1 week in the States, and she had a VHS. It was like 280p. And one of the scenes in the 280p footage looked like it didn't have mouth flaps. Sure, she wrote it without mouth flaps in mind. Kevin comes barreling down the hall. Whenever they get to the part, I think Doug Stone and some others are in the booth
Yeah.
and they're like, "Hey, why didn't you write for the mouth flaps?" And she's like, "What?" She saw is like, and she rewrote it in 20 minutes. And it's what I think.
She's good. She's very good.
Oh,
Yes.
she's phenomenal. I didn't realize because, and I'll say this at pretty much any time. Kevin's and Mary's more so, because it's realizing how important these people were.
Yeah.
Without their work on one of my favorite animes, Code Geass, that pulled me out of a very, very bad place in my life.
Oh.
And so, something like that where I didn't realize that Mary was the lead scriptwriter for that. She wrote most of the scripts for that. And she even told me the other part of it was whenever she'd write, if she knew which actor was in the role, she'd write to their cadence. She named you in particular as one of the where she had to be like, if it was Jamieson, you have to match his tempo and his cadence to make sure it was best delivered. Which for that one being, Diethard, this reporter who wants the scoop, the true story, and will do whatever it takes to get it.
Yep.
I think the casting for that. I think this is my personal opinion, but with Code Geass being at the end of Animaze's kind of, it wasn't the last thing that they did, but it was probably the last big thing that they did. I think it was their magnum opus.
Oh.
I think
It's a good show.
it was directed by Kevin. It was at Mag 8, and you had pretty much almost everyone who had ever worked with Kevin, for the most part, playing a character that had significant screen time.
Yeah.
Playing characters that they were good at playing. Not necessarily typecast, but like they knew their characters.
Well, yeah, you find, hopefully you're casting for strengths. And so with Mary's writing for cadence and the rhythms of the actors, we are dubbing. So it's kind of a crazy thing that she was able to do, because we are matching the rhythms, the mouth movements of the character that were drawn. But every actor has their own rhythm and their own cadence. And we still somehow keep our idiosyncratic rhythms as we're dubbing, which is kind of crazy because we're matching mouth movements. But anyway, but yeah, Mary was able to kind of write with us in mind. And yeah, that made it that much better because everybody's kind of working together.
Oh yeah, and she is a phenomenal writer. Especially for the older stuff, when there weren't like English translated scripts like straight from the like Bandai, she would have to rewrite the entire thing from scratch with like a really poor man's translation.
Yeah.
It's why I think Catnapped is one of my favorites, because it is that. It actually has one of the few roles where Kevin Seymour plays a villain that actually has a lot of screen time. And he's kind of this, I don't want to call him a toady, but he's kind of the right hand of one of McGlynn's characters, who, imagine spoiled princess as an adult with the powers of King Midas, but instead of gold, it's balloons. And
Anime is crazy stuff.
Oh,
That is so wild.
it is. And a lot of the older stuff, like the next episode I'm covering is on. I'll just pull it up because I actually have a copy now. Is this one? Tokyo Revelations.
Tokyo Revelations. I don't remember that one.
So
Maybe I wasn't on it.
So this one was directed by Kevin. Script was by Richard Epcar.
Oh, okay.
Was actually one of the first properties from the Shin Megami Tensei / Persona franchise to get dubbed.
Wow.
Before a lot,
Okay.
because the games, I think they got split between two different studios. You had PCB doing the Persona games, and then I want to see you had Cup of Tea or another studio doing the Shin Megami Tensei games on PS2. But before all that, this was Shin Megami Tensei Tokyo Revelations, done by Manga Video.
Okay.
And Steve Bloom is the lead. You had Weiner as one of the villains. A lot of the staples back then, but it looked like even with this one, the cover art is just like so grainy. Because I think they ripped off from like one of the old pieces of art. So it's like,
yeah, probably.
It wraps around. Like you can tell that they had to like pull some art for it. But I'm covering this one next, and it's the niche stuff that's been like the grails, because nobody had to give that much attention. Like a lot of this stuff didn't get advertised back then. It wasn't the blockbuster like Akira, but Kevin put his all into every piece that he did. Yeah. And honestly, as you said, it wasn't until after he passed away that his impact on the industry as a whole wasn't seen.
Yeah, well, he didn't talk about what he was doing. He just did things.
Yeah.
And then later we find out, oh, he did that, and he did that, and he just put the right people together at the right time, and he facilitated so much, and really brought anime to the West.
The godfather of anime in the West.
Yes, the godfather of anime.
No, absolutely.
But then an unsung hero. So it's wonderful that you're doing this, because people don't know.
Yeah,
and they should know.
They should. Like the way there's this meme. I think it's Charlie Day, the Charlie Day meme with. I think it's from, I forget what show it's from, but it's the whiteboard with all the red like conspiracy lines, and he's pointing at it like, because you can cascade that. Like people know people who know people, and because of that, people get to do stuff that they otherwise wouldn't. You have just some big names to throw out there. You have somebody like Steve Bloom, probably the man of 1,000 voices. Got to start doing early anime stuff with Kevin. Yeah. You have David Hayter, who is known for a lot of his video game writing and directing. Started out, doing stuff at Animaze, but then would just knowing people, as you mentioned, Dorothy is the one who got you through the door. Everyone you had other actors, it was the same thing. Oh, this other person got me through the door. And then you cascade that, and now you have these people who are now directing and casting for all this other stuff that is still going on to this day. And it's the spider web.
And now it's so mainstream.
It is.
And celebrated that that's wonderful. Yeah.
With all the conventions going on, with all the which is where we met, which I'm glad I'm glad I took that leap for myself, because as you said, right now it's trying to get all the work that you can. Everything sucks right now, just to be blunt. But it's taking an opportunity. And I use the words of Kevin. They beat like a heartbeat. Be persistent, not obnoxious. Be persistent, not obnoxious. and just
Yeah.
and it will happen. And so for him, learning more and more about not just his work but little tidbits of his past, I think one of the interesting ones that a lot of people don't know is he used to be in an indie band.
Really? I did
I
not know that. Wow.
This was his. This is the only record they ever released.
Oh my goodness.
I actually used the opening of the first song, called "Creature Man,"
Okay.
as the opening sting to this podcast.
Wow. Nice.
But I dug
A
this
little
out.
Easter egg.
Yeah. No, and another pseudonym, Road Narrows, which wasn't anywhere on any database. I
Wow.
had to get confirmation, I think, from Les that that was his. But this was, he apparently, from what I heard, he got kicked out of his own band.
Oh no.
And then from there, because I want to say this is 1987.
Yeah.
So it would have been shortly after, because I think he started doing this stuff in 92, 93, I want to say.
Which stuff? Anime?
Anime. Like, he started LA Hero. And then
As far as I know, it was like more like 85.
Did he
was
start?
working in a manga store in Santa Monica.
Oh. I did not know that.
Because 92, I believe, is when they started doing stuff in the garage.
I'd heard about the garage.
Yeah. Or maybe it was a little before that. I came along in 95.
Okay.
And by that time, we were at magnitude 8.
Yeah.
So they had a couple of years. But I mean, I think at the beginning, he was working in the manga store. As far as I understand from, I mean, this is kind of at the memorial.
Yeah.
He was responsible in like subtitling for doing different colors to correspond to different characters, so you could kind of know who was saying what.
That makes sense.
His ultimate goal was to do the dubbing of it and to get it into English, and he worked towards that. And they started in that garage, and tried to do it in like everybody come in and work on the script, which for no money makes no sense time wise. And so then they figured out the way that we do it now, which is you go into a booth by yourself and record your lines.
Yeah, or there'll be times where it's because there's dubbing, and then there's, I forget the term for it, but you'd find in a lot of Western cartoons where you'd have the cast all in a room do a read together, or the
Right.
so you could bounce off of them.
Yeah, group record is more what we do in original animation.
That's what that was the term I was looking for.
So it's a group record, and you're all in the booth, a big sound stage kind of booth.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own microphone. Everyone has their own microphone. And sometimes you're separated by a little partition to try to keep bleed from happening.
Yeah.
But often in those situations, you have to be very careful about not overlapping.
Yeah.
Because they don't want that. They can make it happen with editing.
Yeah.
But if you overlap, then they're locked into that, and they don't like to be locked into anything. But there have been times when, you guys can overlap. Oh, yay. And it could be more natural in your discussion.
Oh, some of the mixing, because hearing Joe's or Phil's or Michael's or who's ever doing audio, Les as well, because he'd do some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the audio designs, and this is just seeing kind of the newer stuff versus the older stuff. You'd have, of course, more wallas. You'd have more overlap. It felt more natural. Some of the discussion, which, as you said, now they don't like the overlap because if they need to swap it out, they can.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel as natural.
They have more control, but sometimes, that sounds almost artificial.
Yeah, which, it's techniques that they're currently using. Unless somebody wants to be a revolutionary and change how the industry is running, it's
Yeah.
There's always somebody who's willing to make an art form happen. So even
Oh
if,
yeah, but it comes down to money.
oh yeah,
Always comes down to money. So if you can do, a certain level of artistic quality for cheaper,
yeah,
then that starts to, you know, it goes down to whatever that formula is,
yeah.
where they can still make money and it's still good. Because if it doesn't get good, then it doesn't get bought, then you don't make money. So,
Absolutely. It's paying for what you get. And
yeah.
I think there's a balance to be had. You know,
Well, it's interesting because there are, I mean, I guess it's more like European studios. I mean, I'm talking about like films and things
yeah,
where, film as an art,
yeah,
and they're not as worried about making money as Hollywood is.
yeah,
Uh, and I think there's been a significant decrease in quality because it's all about money now
yeah.
and what's going to sell. And it's kind of racing to the lowest common denominator in some ways.
Yeah, we were mentioning, and with anything, the idea of money, like, it's, yes, it's there, and yes, people have to make a living. And we mentioned earlier, kind of in passing, that the industry kind of went to the lowest bidder, and that kind of just stayed. Hence why everyone is getting gig after gig, and there's a saturation with now. At one point there were four separate dubbing cities. You had,
Yeah.
LA, Texas, New York, and Canada, all
Hmm.
dubbing for anime, cartoons, and video games. And now you can say, the Canadian scene is kind of gone, but you still have New York with NYAV, some people up
Yeah.
there. Mind you, it doesn't matter where you live as much anymore, but
Right.
because there's remote studios. But you have NYAV, you have Crunchyroll Funimation, you have Bang Zoom, which is all over the place. I kind of joke. I said they were because they popped up around the same time as Animaze and LA Hero, and they're kind of they were the last man standing because they're still going strong
Yeah.
since when they popped up. And then of course now you're starting to see more of a European dubbing scene with some of
Mm.
like the Xenoblade game, like some of the Nintendo stuff. They're going to Europe for a lot of their stuff, or Japan starting to do more European dubs using cast members from Europe versus America. And it's fascinating. Like it's that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And the and I want to say this because it's the only person I can think of that's comparable to somebody like Kevin. I think it would be somebody like Andrea Romano for like the Western animation
Uh,
and her
yeah.
contributions to, because out of like voice directors, her work was also a big staple of my childhood. So like the
Yes.
especially with like Batman and her bringing that to life. And so, and I know there's a big celebration, I think about a month or two ago, for her, and
Hmm.
big gathering. But kind of circling back to Kevin, the fact that he went from, you know, his garage, or from a manga. Like, I didn't know about the manga. That was new to me, new information to me.
I believe that's, I mean, it was a while ago
Yeah,
that the memorial happened.
yeah,
But that kind of stuck with me that, I mean, he worked at a manga store. He was getting, in contact with Japan
yeah,
and getting anime over
yeah,
and then working on the subtitling of it and wanted to go to the dubbing of it. But somehow he ended up going to Japan
yes.
and
I
and then the deputies were like, and because Kevin was kind of like, yes, a big wig because of the connection
Yeah,
with the manga store in California. Ooh. But they were like, who do we send to meet him at the airport? And they sent Miyazaki, which is like mind blowing now. Back then, it wasn't for
yeah.
either one of them. But I thought that was kind of a
Because
crazy story that, like, oh my God, okay.
yeah. Because I think
The Japanese people, the people in Japan knew more of who Kevin was than we did.
oh, absolutely. Some of the stuff with somebody like Miyazaki, his stuff, it was also, his stuff was, most of his work was dubbed twice.
Oh yeah.
It was like, and so a lot of people know the second dubs over the first. Like
Hmm.
I think the one that I always point to is like the Totoro dub, which had, I think it was Tim Daly. Was it Tim Daly? It was one of the first actors who played like the animated Superman. Very like he
Yeah.
played the dad, and then of course
Okay.
you had a pair of sisters actually playing sisters, because that was the Disney dub, which they took good they crafted that dub really well. I'm not gonna
Ah,
like a lot of those
good.
dubs, but kind of pivoting off of that, because the reason why I brought up Totoro is full circling. Kevin actually got to do a Ghibli film, one Ghibli film.
Oh,
It was a short called Go Panda Go, and I think
wow.
it came out after Totoro. I forget when Totoro came out, but it looks like
Can't remember.
Totoro is a panda. Like the art style
Huh.
of Totoro is a panda,
Okay.
and that one, I think that one was like one thing that Kevin was like really. I don't know if they just came to him, but 90% of the titles that he worked on were very like dark, very like complex stories. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think those spoke to Kevin in a certain way.
yeah,
I think he was a very complex, complicated man,
oh, yeah.
and as you said, that he and his family didn't get along well. So there was, I think, some dark aspects that the anime and the stories helped him work through. I find that a lot with fans, that the anime helps them get through darker times.
Yeah.
And I don't know why the anime speaks that much
I can
more clearly to people than
I can
TV.
I can probably answer that, just
Yeah.
because
Oh, cause
yeah,
right.
oh, ask me the question, why don't you?
Yeah, with
But
Code Geass.
well,
Yeah.
there were two that really pulled me out. There were two. One of them was Code Geass. That one, and it's why I'm so critical of the later stuff that they've done with it. They had done a spin-off that I think Kevin had since passed away, and they had Funimation had bought it to do it,
Oh,
and it didn't. I heard some stuff from Mary. They tried bringing back writers, but writers didn't want to come back and work on it. And then they did the movies, which I don't know if they used I think some people. I think they had to record new stuff, but I'm not 100% where they did a compilation movie like with Gundam, because I remember you recorded
oh,
for
okay.
ZR with ZRO. You recorded for the Gundam movies. I think
Yeah.
they did they compiled the anime into 3 films. They did that for Code Geass.
Ah, okay.
They retconned a few things, like like I think retconned one or two deaths so they could be used as characters later. And then they did which spoil go watch Code Geass, but Jamieson was not in this last movie, one of the last two stuff. But they did a film where it brought back Johnny's character Lelouch,
Yes.
and
Okay.
they the entire cast came back and did it. And then they did the latest one was a small, I call it a bubble anime, because it takes place after all the main series, but
Okay.
it's inside of a dome. If you've ever seen like the TV show The Dome,
Yeah.
imagine that, but with an anime where nobody from the outside can get in.
Okay.
So you might have like video calls with people on the outside, but they can't affect the story. So, and that one, I think that one was done by NYAV.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was Sinter Nicholas, who phenomenal director. He started as an
Hmm.
audio engineer, I think, on Berserk and some of the older stuff.
Okay.
Really, really cool guy. Really,
Hmm.
really,
Oh
really.
yeah. No, I know Michael.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's a
He's a
sweetheart.
very cool guy.
Very
Yes.
sweetheart. But where my brain's turning. My brain goes everywhere. This is why editing exists.
Indeed.
One thing that you mentioned earlier that I meant to circle back to, and I bounce, so I'm gonna bounce back. But you
Okay.
mentioned the subtitles having different colors.
Yeah.
In Kevin's scripts, he had highlighted each character with different colors.
Ah.
Now that feels like something that's a staple now, But when you're seeing
Yeah.
handwritten notes and highlighters over character names, that makes a lot of sense. And you'd see the matching color with the character on the character sheet, which also he had written up character descriptions for each person, even pronunciations if they had to like change it up a little bit, because some of the names may not come off. Nowadays, y'all can just say the names like it's nothing. For some of the names are insanely hard for Japanese, but it's practice. Practice makes perfect. But back then, like they would, I think the one I'll go to that was written for Catnapped was it was a character by the name of Toriyasu, but they shortened his name to Torias.
Oh.
And just, but they in the script they made note of that, only my friends call me Torias, and I love that film. I love the performances because it was a dialogue between Dorothy playing the lead male character, and then Sandy Fox playing the lead female character, and they're playing a brother sister.
Wow. All right, I gotta check that one out.
It is. It's free on YouTube. I'll email you the link, but it's also tied to my channel. And this is for the episode itself. If any property is available for free to watch, especially the older stuff, it's not on streaming. I will be linking it either in my episode descriptions or it will be on my YouTube channel, like linked, because some of this stuff is not available. Catnapped is not available like anywhere.
Yeah.
Like there's a thing on YouTube, but that one's just it's Sandy's favorite that she got to work on, one of her favorites. So it's the as I said earlier, it's the niche ones. But bouncing back, the other show, to explain your question, why does anime speak to a lot of these kids who grew up on it? Because I think for me, I grew up when like the New York scene blew up a bit, and then you got really busy. You had was it Bleach, Naruto, and all those blowing up around 06, 07. The same goes for Code Geass. Like all those came out around the same time and had all the same people. But the other one that kind of spoke to me was Naruto. So for me, sitting with a lot of the Naruto cast back in Houston, I'm a fan. I'm a fan, but Naruto as a character was a reflection of a lot of us kids who enjoyed nerdy stuff. It's mainstream now, but back in the day, the stereotype is they went for the jock, not the nerd.
Right. And
for somebody like me who struggled a lot in school and bullied like crap, somebody Naruto who was bullied and didn't know why he was being bullied. He was different, and he didn't know why. Why were people being so mean to him? Why were parents looking at him with such disgust? Why were kids just not knowing why? Why were the kids also carrying that disgust in him? And realizing that you don't need, a lot of friends, he connected with people as he grew up. Watching Naruto, it was over 700 episodes of following this kid's journey from being basically we get to see his entire life. And for a lot of us who were kids when it started, I remember it would have been I think 6 or 7 when I started. You follow him because Naruto would have been like 11 or 12, and then followed up all the way to whenever I'm a teenager or even a young adult, where we see Naruto grows up with us. And you get to see his struggles, not just through, wanting to become stronger, because for me, being stronger, it's being resilient. Like that is what strength is in Naruto and all the other ones as well. All your smorgasbord, your Bleach with Ichigo, your Code Geass with Lelouch.
Yeah.
Or even Suzaku.
It comes down to resilience and perseverance. And
teaching you, and a lot of the newer shows, of course, have taken more of the isekai route, telling like a fantastical story or tropes. But back then it was, this isn't cool. people who are watching it are being bullied nonstop, and there's no support network. There's nothing. There was nothing there. Yeah, there were counseling services at school, but they'd go home. I'd go home by myself, and I'd literally, and I kid you not, the couch right here is the same couch I would sit and watch these shows. This couch is older than me. And so it would be watching, on Cartoon Network, with Toonami, watching all these shows come out weekly, or for some of the Western stuff, it would be waiting for a Netflix DVD to come in.
Yeah.
Because that was how it was back then. I think for Avatar: The Last Airbender, I had to watch that disc by disc because we didn't have cable.
Wow.
So yeah, after we lost cable, I had to was me. I'm a kid. I can't afford streaming. I pirated anime back in the day when I was a teenager, because that's what you had to do. Definitely easier than what Kevin had to do with trying to at least just get the stuff over here.
Yeah.
But it was watching those stories and kind of circling back, how you think that Kevin used those stories to work out his,
or that was what he was interested in, or what attracted him.
Yeah.
And so if you are presented with all these different stories, which ones do you want to do?
Yeah.
And you follow your heart, and that is intriguing or interesting to me, and I want to work on it.
But yeah.
So.
But that's I think why Naruto spoke to a lot of, some of my friends. Even now they're married, they have kids, they scientists, doctors, and we'll nerd out about Naruto. dead serious. We will just nerd out. So I'll make them jealous sometimes. Like, hey, look who I'm with.
Yeah.
So, but that it really speaks to us, and even throughout the other media. And I don't want to babble. I babble, but even with the games, we'd not just do the films, the TV show, but a lot of us diehard fans would go play video games based off of anime.
Yeah.
Or I think one of the ones that I'm most excited to dive into for this project is the .hack games.
Oh, those, yeah. Interesting games.
Oh, yeah. No, very interesting. It's one of the hardest things to get a hold of in regards to it's the .hack limit. How do I say that? Limit something. It's liminality. Only available in the games as a bonus disc, and you have to collect all 4. And the 4th game, complete in box, is like $300.
Really?
Yes. So I own.
Whoa.
I own the first 2 or 3 parts of .hack. I think they're up there somewhere. Infection and Outbreak, but Quarantine is you need all 4 parts to actually watch the full OVA. And listen, it speaks volumes to how much Kevin did, but the fact that a lot of it is just so, unless you were like Trigun or Bebop or Geass and got bought up by Funimation, if you didn't get bought up by Funimation or another studio, then a lot of just the demand for reprints, or the demand for, non-existent, this is the only way to get this one.
Wow.
Or like an old DVD, Catnap, same thing. Ambassador Magma, same thing. That one's another Steve Bloom, the man who's everywhere. I'm looking forward to talking with him. He's going to be a delight. I will say I love how he's been doing a podcast with bringing in different people from all over the industry, and I like how he conducts his. It's kind of similar. We're talking about behind the scenes stuff and how you develop your characters, all sorts of stuff. But let me think if there's anything else. This is editing, so I guess the last thing I kind of want to wrap up with is: is there anything that you want to be told, about the industry back then? or something like, because you go in, you work, because the environment there. Kevin was a staple, but is there a
Yeah.
story there that you want to be told that wouldn't usually fit like your typical, like, oh, you want to talk about your characters? If not, that's totally fine. But
I'm trying to think. I don't think that there's anything. I mean, we've touched on a lot of this stuff.
yeah, then I might just cut this part out
Yeah,
and
I think. I mean, the whole analog and doing it not for the money, but for the art of it.
yeah.
I mean, but that's for me the kind of the nostalgia of the early days of anime because it wasn't celebrated. There were no conventions. You know,
Well,
you
there's
just
Comic
went
Con,
and
but that was
yeah,
for
but
comic
that
books.
was it was kind of different. Yeah, I mean, we didn't. People didn't admit to doing it. Different names were used. All kinds of stuff that were like, it was just kind of like a smaller community, and who enjoyed doing it because it was fun, or they thought it was cool. They enjoyed the artwork or the art form, because you're making $50.
That's like I know for me, because I'll probably this will probably be near the tape end of the episode, but for me, when I started doing this, because you were the reason why I honestly went and started this project.
Oh my!
Well, you listened to me.
Well,
You
yeah.
you listened to, like, I think it was in Anaheim, California. It might
Okay.
because you were right near, I think, Karen Strassman, like right or somewhere around. It was in that back corner of the convention center,
Okay. Yeah.
and I remember just sitting with like sitting or standing with you for like just cumulatively like an hour, just at different points, and just coming
Yeah.
to that realization of just talking about something that I really enjoy, and then just because that you had told me the Thanksgiving story at that show
Yeah.
initially, and
Yeah.
it was that feeling of ear to ear grin. That's the feeling that I was like, this type of stuff needs to be shared, because after that I went and
Yeah.
researched him. I'm like, there's nothing,
No.
and if his story isn't told, like, maybe he didn't do interviews. He didn't do interviews. He didn't
Oh
want to do
no.
interviews.
He was not a public person at all. He's a very private person. So,
And
I mean, a lot of us didn't know.
yeah,
And then at the memorial, stuff's coming out, and we're like,
yeah,
"What? he was the guy?" Yeah, we didn't know that, and so yeah, so it's nice that his story should be told, and people should be aware of his contribution
oh yeah.
to an art form that is now widely celebrated and makes a whole lot of money for Sony.
Absolutely, and to be honest, for me, and this has been the hardest part, trying to figure out the balance, is for a man who was so reserved, learning. I want to honor his memory through, like through stories more so, because if he was so reserved, unless he, honor his memory in the sense of, did he want some of this stuff of his life to be told or not? So, and I'm slowly figuring that out.
Yeah,
That's why I've been.
I don't. I think he was more of a private person.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think his work speaks for itself,
Oh.
and that's what that's what he would want to be remembered for.
Which is why I want to tell it in the form
Yeah.
of stories, because y'all would be considered
Yes.
his work. Like, his work was with y'all.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
A lot of us owe our careers to him, and he was the one who trained us and brought us in and brought us up through the ranks, and
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, and this is just a recent story that I heard, was there would be times where he didn't want to bring somebody, but like Mary Claypool would be like, no, 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 no. You try again, Buster. Just to, and so, it's learning that they're, like I said, like being able to speak with Mary recently, kind of eye opening. It's Kevin was one piece of that puzzle. He was one of the biggest pieces,
Oh yeah,
but
but everybody contributed.
everyone contributed.
Yeah.
And my goal by the end of this is to have that tapestry.
Oh, nice.
I have,
Yeah.
and so I have a few people who are willing to help me already. I know some people are more so waiting until I've gotten a bit bigger. I think one of them was like David Hayter said he'd help me whenever I got to the documentary portion, which I'm still planning on making. Like,
Good.
it's I can use some of this footage down the line if I need to, or get new footage
Yeah.
later. Like, for example, heaven forbid I interview somebody now and then I don't get to the documentary, and they pass away. I can
Oh,
use the
yes.
footage there, and then I plan on, whenever I do get to the documentary, I plan on making it in memory of everyone who had passed. Kevin, Tom, Bob,
Yeah.
I think, was it Fred Knight? I forget his first name, but there were so many people that were staples back then who, they're gone now.
Yeah.
And if everyone's gone and there's nobody to tell the tale, stories are kept alive through
Yeah.
telling them to other people. And so that's my goal. And then I've mentioned this to you before, but I definitely want to mention in this episode is I get to the point where, I have my podcast going and I'm getting more guests to talk with. I have a better rhythm, less technical difficulties. Find my footing. I have my
Right.
archive, which I've been slowly building out. And just to kind of
Good.
reiterate, archive is I bought two websites. I bought my website that I basically building almost like a copy of Behind the Voice Actors, but it's accurate. It's accurate with proof or credit. And some of the corrections, like for Ghost in the Shell, I've gotten straight from Mary herself, where all the credits will credit her and Kevin, but Kevin was an accidental credit by.
Oh.
So it's just like, no, I solely wrote it, and it's just making sure that
Okay.
it's accurate, and I'm coding it by hand, so it's taking a very long time, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. Of course, the podcast, the documentary will be, I'm debating whether or not I want to do it as a documentary film or like a docu-series. I'm a sucker for the old like history of film documentaries.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for those. Those are what I grew up on as well. My dad was a film
Yeah.
buff, so. But then the last thing, which I don't have it publicly on any of like my logo or anything, is like a non-profit grant program for budding engineers, directors, or artists
Wow.
who, in the words of Kevin, give them a chance.
Yeah.
It's off of like, and that's kind of something in do it in his name, because then even after he's gone, he's still able to help people.
Still giving people a chance.
And I'm nowhere near that part yet, but it's something that I want to grow to for this, because, and I want to branch out. I want to do other podcast topics. Like I want to do one that's a bit more generalized, talking to directors from the different, the Texas, New York, kind of talking about the directing process. But this project will always be kind of like my baby. Like I want to make sure that this story is told.
Yeah.
And if I can grow to multiple shows, I can. But this is the one that I have this roadmap, and I want to see it through. And it's just it's for the record, it has been grueling. The level of like the late nights, staying up and editing, like this stuff is not easy.
Yeah.
This stuff is not easy.
No, it's not.
And then the constant patience that is needed. Everyone's busy, so if you're trying to talk to people and nobody gets back to you, it's
Yes.
it's
frustrating, I'm sure.
It's the self-doubt. It's the it's I think I said it's Hollywood, it's LA. There's a level of, oh, I'll do it if somebody else does it first kind of mentality.
Oh,
The
yeah.
bandwagon mentality. So,
Right.
and I'm not. It doesn't upset me. I was born in California, so I'm well aware of that
Ah.
being there. But it's just it's that patience, and so I will I will continue to troop on. And no,
Good.
I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, talk about Kevin, talk about animes, talk about the
Yeah.
industry back then as a whole. Because without Kevin, y'all wouldn't be here. Like a lot of y'all wouldn't be here. But then
Yeah.
without y'all, a lot of people, a lot of the not just the fans, but like other industry people would not like the fans, the people, they wouldn't be where
Yeah.
they're
True.
at today. Some, you can make the argument there's some very like doctors and engineers and all these people who would like really people who are saving
Oh,
lives or
wow.
do it's a spider, it's you see it as a form of a
Yeah.
spider web, and you're like their youth was made because of
Yeah.
something that this guy in a garage starting out in a garage did. As I said, it baffles me.
We are all so interconnected. It
Yes.
is amazing.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. So I mean, anything that can help people realize how interconnected we all are. And yeah, a small action can result in a changed person in a career
Uh,
or a whole industry
oh,
in the future.
it's the drop in the ocean mentality. You make a drop in the ocean and it
Yes.
causes a tidal wave or a
Yeah.
butterfly
Yeah.
effect or however you want to put it. Just
Right.
one decision can change an entire entire industry.
Yeah.
So, but no, I wanted to really say thank you. Like this means a lot to me. I know.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So,